Hello, everyone. Today's shir is about Hilchos Muktzah, in particular, the opinion of the Rambam, how he understands the entire Gzeira of Muktzah. We're going to get there by honing in on the halachas of Kli Shemlachto Leheter. That's a Kli that has no prohibited function, like a vase or a table. Things that there's no malacha involved. It doesn't involve one of the 39 malachas to use them, but still there are some halachas of muktzah. And we're going to get into the opinion of the Rambam there. We're going to get into the other opinions, and by understanding the Rambam there, we're also going to hopefully understand the general opinion of the Rambam more clearly. Now, the Rambam, the first source that we gave you on the source sheet was the Rambam Perek Daled from Hilchos Shabbos, the end of Perek Daled. Rambam gives really three reasons for the Yisur of Muktzah. There's three reasons. One is Daber Davar. Daber Davar tells us to change the way we speak. The Rambam says another thing about Daber Davar, an extension of Daber Davar, is also to change the way we carry things. And therefore, we shouldn't just carry things around, and that's where Muktzah comes in. The second thing the Rambam says is that if I were allowed to carry things that involve a malacha, let's say if I were allowed to carry my cell phone around, if I was allowed to carry matches around, if I was allowed to carry my computer around, then it would be very likely that I would come to use those things and actually perform Isser. So in that regard, says around that Muktzah is a safeguard for Kli Shemlachto Isser, for a prohibited item, an item that includes a usage that is prohibited. And finally, the Rambam says that the third and last reason that he gives for the Isser of Muktzah is that there are some people who on a daily basis they don't encounter any of the 39 malachas. And says the Rambam, therefore, we give them Muktzah. Because if they didn't have Muktzah, then there would be no way for them to feel Shabbos as being more holy and different from the rest of the week. But by giving them Muktzah, that's going to apply to everyone, because everyone's going to have a trouble carrying. And the Ravid we saw in the first source says two kashas on the Rambam. One is that the Gemara itself answers the Rambam's question. The Rambam wants to know what's the reason for the Gzeira of Muktzah. And the Gemara says that Muktzah is because of Hotzah. It's because that it's usher to take things out from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, since it's usher to take things out from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, that if I'm carrying things within my Rosh Hashanah, then I might come to take them out from my Rosh Hashanah into a Rosh Hashanah, and that would be usher. So says the Ravid, lest I come to Hotzah, to carrying from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, that there was an Isser that I not even carry certain items at least within a Rosh Hashanah. The Ravid brings another proof for his opinion, and that is Shabbos Kuf Chav Gimel Amud Beis, and that was our next source on the source sheet. The Ravid says, I see from this Gemara that the Rambam is in fact incorrect, and really the reason for the Gzeira is Hotzah. Now I presume when you read through this Gemara, you did not see a proof for the Ravid, and you probably didn't see any relevance in this Gemara to the Ravid or the Rambam. This Gemara has nothing to do with that. Let's go through the Gemara and let's see what the Gemara does tell us. And I'll tell you right now that the reason why we sort not like the Ravid is because we learned to like Rashi. But let's learn it like Rashi. Let's just discuss together what Rashi comes out with, and then we'll discuss how the Ravid learns the Gemara and why he learns it differently. The Gemara begins by telling us that even though they prohibited Muktzah, there were three things that they were exceptions to the rule. The Gemara tells us Shlosha Kelim Nitalin b'Shabbos. Those are Muktzah Shal Devela, a knife for cutting fig cakes, Zuama Lishtra, to stir, Shal Kedera, the Saking Tana Shal Gabe, Hashulchan, and also a small knife. Says the Gemara, these things were never part of the Gzeira. And I told you to take a look at the Rashi. The Rashi tells you the reason why they were never part of the Gzeira. It says Rashi, the reason they were never part of the Gzeira is because they're Tedir and B'tashmish. They're used very regularly. Rashi uses this language throughout. And if you got to the last source, which was the Shulchan Aruch uses the language of Tedir. The Mishnah Berurah there uses the language of Tedir and B'tashmish as well. Now, that's step one of the Gemara. Step two is that Gzeira didn't remain intact. Even though they began by prohibiting everything and only permitting those three things, the Gemara tells us that slowly they began to permit more and more and more. First, they permitted Kli Shemlachto Leheter for the Tzorach Gufo and Makomo. I'm saying like Rava that we saw the other opinion. Abayu just has a slower paced change, and it comes out with at the end with less. But going with Rava, the halacha follows that the Gemara first they permitted it kli shalachto leheter tzarich gufo makomo. That means so long as the kli has no iser function, you can carry it if you need to use it tzarich gufo or tzarich makomo. Whether you need to carry it to use it for itself, meaning let's say the item happens to be a table that you need to use in order to place things on it, that's okay. And the other thing might be, let's say there's a vase on your table and you want to move that vase. So I don't need the vase, but I need the place that's called the Tzarech Makoma, and those are both mutters at the Gemara. The Gemara continued that they also mattered Mecham L'Tzel. Mecham L'Tzel literally means from the sun to the shade. What it means to say though is you can take it not because you need to use it or not because you need to use its place, but simply because you don't want it to get ruined. It's left out in the sun, or for that matter, it could have been left out in the rain, or for that matter, it could have been in a place where you're worried that people will steal it. All these are just things that are protecting the kli. And by kli shemalachto leheter, something a utensil that doesn't really have anything to do with any of the 39 malachas and Issa of the 39 malachas, there they said, Chazal said you could carry those kalim even for that reason. And then they started to see even more lenient. The Gemara continues. They were even more lenient, that they even permitted a kli shemalachto le'isser. Why did they amount to kli shemalachto le'isser? They amount to gufo and makomo, not mecham l'tzel. That means if you needed to use it for a mutter reason, or you need to use its place, then you can move it. But if you need to move it just because you're worried about it getting ruined, then says the Gemara, you can't move it. That they didn't matter. So we have our Gemara here. We have the Gemara with the historical progression of the Isser Muktzah, and we have the three original exceptions to the rule. And as of now, we don't see this being a Gemara for the Ravid at all, and we don't see its relevance. Now, before we get to learning the Gemara like the Ravid and seeing why it is in fact a question on the Rambam, I'd like to go into the next source on the sheet. Now, the next source on the sheet is Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Shin Ches Halacha Dalet, and there the Mechaber tells us that they permitted the Kelim Shemalachto Leheter you're allowed to carry, and you can carry them Gufo, Makomo, Mecham L'Tzel, all the three categories. But says the Mechaber, Abal Shalol L'Tzorach Klal Asar L'Tal. You can't carry them for no reason. That means to say, you can carry them for the reasons listed by the Gemara, but you cannot carry them for no reason. Now, what does that mean? It sounds like, what do you mean? Why would I carry something for no reason? Whatever, I'm carrying it, so go ask me why I'm carrying it, and that's the reason why I'm carrying it. There's no such thing as no reason. So the Achronim discuss what would be no reason. The Shulchan gives an interesting answer that, let's say some people like to fiddle with a pen in their hands just to it calms their nerves, or it's a nervous type of reaction to something, to things around them. He says that type of carrying has no purpose, and that would be Shalol Tzorach. But there are those who argue on it. The Mishnah Berurah here says that Shalol Tzorach would be that there's no Tzorach for Shabbos. Let's say it's very close to the end of Shabbos, and I'm moving something that won't make any difference to me on Shabbos, but it will make a difference for after Shabbos. On that, they didn't allow you to do, says the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, but carrying on though, the Shulchan Aruch says an exception to the rule. Shulchan Aruch says that Kisvei Kodesh Svarim and Achalim food are mutar l'tal talam afilu shelo l'tzorach klal, even for no reason. Now the source for this Shulchan Aruch is a Ran, and the Ran says that food and Svarim are similar to the three things listed in our Gemara. The three things listed in our Gemara are knives that used in your kitchen, and spoons, and that type of stuff. And says the Ravid that Svarim and clothing would be included in that. Certainly we can understand Tadir and B'tashmish. You should hope that somebody uses his Svarim often, that they would be Tadir and B'tashmish. And certainly clothing is something that you use regularly. If we wouldn't allow you to carry your clothing, you wouldn't be able to get dressed Shabbos morning. Or you might even have an issue walking in them, because whether walking in them is carrying or not. But leaving that aside, they would have to matter them. That's what the Ran says. But the Ran is coming from our Gemara, right? It's an open Gemara. It should seem like an undebatable fact. And the Mishnah Berurah makes it clear that this comes from our Gemara, because the Mishnah Berurah adds the cases of our Gemara. He says, Kosos, Ka'aros, and Tzloichios. These are the cases Tosos adds to our Gemara. The Sak and Shalgav Shulchan, that's the case of our Gemara. This says the Mishnah, why did the Dirim B'Tashmish they're telling the B'Tashmish? And therefore, there was never any Isser of Muktzah like we saw even in the earliest days of Muktzah, when Muktzah was very Chomer, there was still no Isser. But interestingly, the Mishnah Berurah concludes the Yesh Machmir and Afilu B'Kelim Elu. There are those who are strict with these Kelim. The question is, how could there be those that are strict? There are those that are strict with these Kelim. How could it be? There's an open Gemara that says that these Kelim never had an Isser even from the first place. Right? Even the Sak and Shagav Shulchan never had an Isser. So how could there be someone who is Machmir about the Sak and Shalav Shulchan? Seems to not make sense. Who is the Shita? So the Sharatzian says, you want to know what it is? It's the Rambam. He's not quoting our Rambam, it's a different Rambam. But that Rambam is now, the Ravid said he had a kasha from the Rambam Kuf Chav Gimel. We have a kasha from the Rambam Kuf Chav Gimel. But a different Rambam. The Rambam says that there's no difference. All Kelim Shemalachtam Leheter are on the same ground. There's no exceptions to the rule. And we said, Rambam, why are you saying that? This is our kasha. Kuf Chav Gimel says there is. So that's our kasha from Kuf Chav Gimel. Now let's get to the Ravid's kasha from Kuf Chav Gimel. The Ravid says he saw Kuf Chav Gimel as a proof that total is because of Hotzah. Now, where's the Raya coming from? To me, it's clear the Ravid is coming from the fact that he learned the Gemara differently than Rashi. Rashi learned the Gemara that these three things are the exception to the rule. Why? Because they're tadir b'tashmish, they're used very regularly, and therefore Chazal could not answer them. To me, it seems clear that the Ravid learned that that's not the reason they're the exception to the rule. These Kelim are the exception to the rule because total is because of Hotzah. And it wouldn't make sense to, if total is because of Hotzah, it wouldn't make sense to answer something that you'd never carry out of your home. My kitchen knives, I'm never going to carry outside. So if I never plan on carrying my kitchen knives outside, and no one does, so then why would Chazal answer it? And that's how the Ravid understood the Gemara. And he says, therefore, it's another proof to Hotzah. Now, how do I know the Ravid understood the Gemara that way? It's simple. It's in the Ravid's words. You see the Ravid paraphrases the Gemara. He says, that's a later part of the Gemara. Shamu shlosha kelim kitanim nitalim al shulchan. 3 kelim kitanim are nitalim al shulchan. What does it mean? 3 kelim are nitalim al shulchan that can be carried on the table. What does that mean? 3 kelim can be carried on the table. What does that even mean? And question number 2 is, that's not what the Gemara said. The Gemara said shlosha kelim nitalim b'Shabbos miktzor shel tevela v'zu amal lishra and shel kedera. One of them is called Al Shulchan. Nothing else is called Al Shulchan. The answer is that the Ravid understood that they're all Al Shulchan. All of them. That last line is going on everything because they're all Shulchan type of kelim. They're all table type of kelim. They remain by the table. They don't go outside. So says the Ravid, there's no reason to aser these kelim because total Muktzah is only because of Hotzah of carrying from Rishus to Rishus. And I'm never going to do that with these kelim, therefore they made no gzera. And says the Ravid, that's where my kasha on the Rambam is. So we have 2 kashas on the Rambam from the Gemara and Kuf Chav Gimel. And it's from that same line of the Gemara and Kuf Chav Gimel. The Ravid says, I see 3 exceptions to the rule, and they're because of Hotzah. And that's clear to the Ravid. What will the Rambam answer to that question? And we had a kasha that the Gemara says that these are the exceptions to the rule, and Rambam says they're not the exception to the rule. There's no exception to the rule. Where is the Rambam coming from? It's an open Gemara. So trying to deal with the Ravid's question, first one might say that the Rambam would answer to Dirim B'Tashmish. To Dirim B'Tashmish, these 3 things are to Dirim B'Tashmish. The reason why they are mutter is not because of Hotzah. It's not because they're not related to Hotzah. It's rather because they're to Dirim B'Tashmish and the Chazal just couldn't answer them. Now there's an obvious difficulty with saying such a pshat. Because if you say that the Rambam matter these kelim because there's the Dirim B'Tashmish, because there's no reason to be gozer on them, and they should be mutter till today. So if we just had the Ravid's question, we could answer with saying that the Rambam learns like Rashi. But now we have our question, that why does the Rambam say that they are usher today? They're no longer mutter. So then what do you mean? The Gemara says that they're mutter. So I'll tell you, I think really the Rambam learns the Gemara like the Ravid. I think the answer is, and I think to get the Gemara very clear, and the Shitas HaRambam, which was our goal to get the Shitas HaRambam very clear, is that the Rambam learned that yes, the original Gzeira of total was because of Hotzah, as the Gemara says, as the Ravid brings from other places. And the reason why these 3 exceptions were made is like the Ravid said, because they're never going to come to Hotzah with these kelim because they stay at home. So now, what happened? If it was originally become so, why did it change? So I'll tell you, the Rambam will answer. He'll say, don't ask me. Ask the Gemara. Which Gemara? The Gemara in Kufchav Gimel Amud Beis. Says the Rambam will tell you that the Gemara in Kufchav Gimel Amud Beis, you'll have to learn like him. Why will you have to learn the Gemara like him? Because it's clear that the Gemara changed its reason why. Why is it clear? I'll tell you. Says the Gemara, they started to be Mekel. In what way did they start to be Mekel? Says the Gemara, they started to permit a Kli, but only certain type of Kelim. Kelim Shemalachtam Leheter. Kelim Shemalachtam Leheter? Why Kelim Shemalachtam Leheter? What's the room? Why make a difference between a Kli Shemalachtam Leheter and a Kli Shemalachtam Le'eser? I think the answer is simple. Because the reason for Tiltal changed. The reason for Tiltal changed from Muktzah into a new thing. You know what it turned into? That you might come and use a Kli Shemalachtam Le'eser for its Isser function. And therefore they said don't even carry it, because if you carry it, you're going to come to use it, and then you're going to be over an Isser D'Oraisa of Shabbos. I'll give you another proof that the Isser changed. The Isser changed because they made this distinction that, you could carry it to a Kufa Makom, but for other reasons not. Now, if you're in the world of Muktzah, not only is there no reason to be more Mekel by Kufa Makom, but if anything, there's more reason to be Machmer. Because the primary Isser of Muktzah is when I'm carrying the Keli in order to use it. So if I'm carrying the Keli in order to use it is the primary Isser of Muktzah, then they cannot tell me that that's going to be when it's mutter. So it must be that the reason changed. Now you'll tell me that's crazy. How originally it was because of Muktzah, but then it changed. I'll tell you it's not crazy. The Tesis in Baba Kama Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis says that when this Gezerah was originally enacted, it was only for their generation. And the later generations that started to be more Mekel, they started to be more Mekel because they were making a new Gezerah. And I think when you take that Tosis in mind, then Rambam is entitled to say that way as well and say, not only did they just make it a more lenient Gezerah, but they actually made a different Gezerah. They felt Shmir Shabbos needed to be strengthened in that regard, not in the regard of Hotzah, but in the regard that they were addressing. And that's why that they were Gozer in the format that they said. So now I think everything comes together very well. Why? Because we asked why did the Rambam come with new reasons, and the answer is he had to. Because the reason of the Gemara clearly no longer applied, because the stipulations that the Gemara gave did not follow that reason. But to answer our second question of why are these three exceptions no longer exceptions, I think we've answered that as well. The Rambam says that Tiltal is not because of Hotzah. Those three exceptions were like the Ravid said. Those were because Hotzah wasn't applicable to them. But when we left the world of Hotzah and entered the world of, as the Rambam called it, Davar, or because you might come to use a Kli Shemalachtam Le'eser, or because people won't be Batal B'Malachtan, and those things have no benefit over anything else to not have a Gezerah. And therefore the Rambam learns that there's no chiluk between those things and everything else. Yashar Koach, I think we have a clear shot in the Rambam. Thank you very much.